This video is designed to introduce you to the two-handed interface, or THI, a natively 3D interface that's based on a pair of handheld tracked button controllers called space grips. These are the space grips. Each houses a 3D tracker and has 4 buttons. 2 buttons are under the thumb. The thumb switches between the red one and the green one. There's a button under the forefinger for object movement and one under the middle finger for viewpoint movement. There's a left space grip and a right one. The right one has a red band on it. Think of the letter R, red for right. Your hand fits over the space grip like this, with your thumb over the red and green buttons and your forefinger and middle finger over the 2 red buttons. There's no right or wrong way to hold the space grips. There is a tendency to hold them upright like a joystick, but that can restrict your motion. Holding them with the thumb up is comfortable for most users. Looking at the screen, we see that these cursors represent your hands. They track your hands one to one, left and right, up and down, in and out. They also have orientation, as you can see by watching the sticks that point out of the cursors. Moving objects around in THI is easy to learn because it's so much like picking up objects in the real world. Simply reach out and touch the object with your cursor or its pointer. Then press the button under your forefinger to grab the object. As long as you're holding down the button, the object moves with your hand, both in position and orientation. Releasing the button releases the object. This works with either hand. To rotate or translate an object into the desired position, you may want to perform this simple operation several times. Grab, release, grab again, and so on. Let's look at a simple positioning operation. As you can see, the blue object is intended to fit into the depression on the blue side of the large cube. In the next video, you'll learn to position yourself to more comfortably place objects. Moving your viewpoint through the virtual world is also simple, although a bit more challenging than object manipulation. You can rotate, translate, or scale the world. Let's start with translation. You grab the world by holding down the space grip button that's located under the middle finger. Just as in object manipulation, this works with either hand. You can also alternate hands to do what we call viewpoint walking. Walk forward and back, left and right, and even up and down like climbing a ladder. Just grab, pull, release, grab, pull, release. Just be careful not to accidentally grab with both hands or you might scale or rotate. You've seen viewpoint movement as a one-hand at a time operation. You can also grab with both hands at the same time. Holding down the middle finger button on both hands enables rotation. It's a little easier to see what's going on with this spindle. You make the spindle visible with a click of the right hand green thumb button. Another click turns it off. You may not have thought about it before, but when things rotate, they rotate about a specific point or axis. For example, a door swings about its hinges, and the hinges may be on the left or the right side of the door. Rotations of your viewpoint also have a center or axis of rotation. And the spindle is designed to show you the center of rotation and to help you place that center in the world. It's easier to see how your center affects your rotation than it is to describe it with words. So let's take a look at a few rotations. If we want to rotate about a particular corner of this cube, we place the spindle's center there and press both middle finger buttons. This keeps the corner in view and within reach. If you want to go around the other side of the cube, you can put the center of rotation at the center of the cube and swing your view around. Let's try that again, but this time not being as careful with the center. Watch how the corner swings around when we place the center somewhere else. Notice that for now we've been keeping our hands at a constant distance from one another while we rotate. If we don't, we might scale as well as rotate. Holding down the middle finger button on both hands and moving them together and apart scales the world. As with rotation, you may want to scale about a particular point, thus keeping it within your reach. Again, the spindle helps you visualize how important the center is. Suppose we want to look at one end of the key shape close up. Simply position the spindle's center at the point of interest, press the middle finger button on both hands, and pull the hands apart. Think of this as stretching the world. To get a broader view, grab with both hands and move your hands closer together. Think of this as shrinking the world. Note that you can scale and rotate at the same time. Now let's take a look at general two-handed interaction, where we move both objects and viewpoint. Suppose we want to dock this cube on the other side of the big cube. There are lots of ways of accomplishing this, just as there are lots of ways of doing things in the real world. In this case, I just pick up the cube and move it to the other side of the big cube. Then I move my viewpoint over there. Notice that I place the center of viewpoint rotation roughly at the center of the big cube to swing my viewpoint to the other side. To put the cube in its slot, I just pick it up and put it roughly in place. Then I move my viewpoint in for a better view and put it more precisely into place. I may need to repeat the process to get it right. We've noticed one or two mistakes common to new users of THI. Knowing about them and knowing workarounds ahead of time may make learning THI easier. We've already talked about the importance of the center of rotation and scale. Some people forget to pay attention to the center at first. The spindle is there to help you see how to control the center better. You may choose to keep the spindle visible even after you're comfortable with THI. It's common for new users to get lost by growing the world too big or shrinking it too small. First, keep in mind that if you're lost, you can always push the space bar to reset the viewpoint. But if instead you want to work your way out, the solution is generally to grow or shrink the world to a manageable size. To demonstrate the first case, I'll scale the world way up. Here I'm growing the world. Notice that all the objects are now beyond my reach. Also notice that viewpoint walking seems to have no effect. That's because the world is huge. I have the reach of an ant now. To fix this, simply shrink the world to the size where the objects are within reach, or at least to where you can put them within reach. I'm shrinking the world to a reasonable size now, and adjusting the distance to the objects by translating the world. This may take some practice. Now I'll demonstrate what it looks like when the world is so small you can't reach objects because they're too close. Here I'm shrinking the world, and notice my hands are now beyond the objects in the world. I have the reach of a giant. Viewpoint walking moves me too fast now. Here you need to push the world away until the objects are in reach, and then scale the world up, making sure you keep the center in your field of interest. Again, this may take some practice, but once mastered, you'll be able to move around any world, big or small. Even when the world isn't too small, your hands may be beyond the point of interest. In this case, simply push the world away with a middle finger button press, and that will put the objects of interest within reach. That's about it. Just remember that the middle finger button grabs the world and the forefinger button grabs objects. Also remember that the right hand green thumb button turns the spindle on and off. Watch the video and practice these few simple actions, and the two-handed interface will become second nature.